In this video, we're gonna talk about what pieces of your model project you should probably begin with, or at least now that you're in a beginning kind of stage of the learning process. And we're also gonna we talked about duplicates on the last video, but we're also gonna talk about duplicate specials. And again, we'll explain what that is and when you should be using them. Alright, so again, I have a basic layout of what the Betsy Ross house it's like. I have some of the main features. It's not everything, but I've accounted for most of the detail that I'm gonna be working on, including some of the side things over here. I just want to start with some of the simple things in this basic layout before we start kind of on the more complicated things, such as the door frame and the windows. Some of the details on this I don't know what you call it, but it's kind of like this roof thing here and the roof and things like that. So let's start with some simple things that we can address at the beginning. Just to kind of get a little warm up, when it comes to modeling. So let's begin. I'm going to begin with this piece right here, and you don't see it in this reference, but in some of my reference, I actually see a white fence that's closed there sometimes. So I'm actually going to include this into my modeling, and I'm actually going to maybe include some of this fence thing that I got going on here. Some of it, not the whole thing. Alright, so let's begin with the most simple one, which is this one right here. Okay, so if we go into our front viewport, alright, and again, the image is a little pixelated, so we probably need to kind of switch back and forth between the detail that we can see there and the one that we need to kind of see here. And again, this one, what you have to do whenever you're going to model something is just kind of get into a habit of just analyzing how you're going to approach this piece. And for instance, this one is going to be pretty simple. Definitely going to be one piece. I don't need to kind of break it into pieces. It's kind of mushroom shape, and I'm basically going to be using extrusion techniques to be able to accomplish it. So I'm going to be going back and forth between this and my reference. So let me just kind of put this on the side, and just so you know, I'm kind of using a dual monitor system. So I have my reference on my other monitor just to kind of make it easier for me. But if not, you can always just kind of make your Maya a little smaller like this, and maybe have the reference just kind of peeking here on the side if it makes it easier for you. So let's do that. Again, I want my Maya to take most of the space anyway. Okay, so again, very simple kind of mushroom shape. It's got a little bit of base, and then a little bit of a top here. So let's just again accommodate this a little bit. And like I said, I'm going to be using kind of extrusion techniques to be able to accomplish this shape. So first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a division right here. That's going to allow me to create this bottom part first. And then at the top, I'm going to take the top face and I'm going to extrude it out into this shape. So let's begin. I'm going to go into my additive mesh, and again, if you find it more comfortable to have your tools on your shelf, that's completely fine, especially if you follow the tutorial on how to create your own customized shelves. If you find it easier to go to your menus and just use your tools like that, you can do it as well. I myself find it more comfortable just to detach the menu and just have it on my side and just kind of going back and forth between the tools that I want to use. So that's the technique that I'm going to be using. Alright, so the first edit mesh tool that I'm going to be using, it's Insert the Edge Loop tool. Okay, and again, notice that I'm in an orthographic viewport where we have the front, Now, before I start modeling, another thing that I like to address is that there is a difference between what you're seeing here in some aspects of my model and what's actually on the picture. And the reason for that is because we have to kind of compensate for the fact that our reference has perspective to it. And in the orthographic we don't have any perspective, so we kind of have to account for that. So be careful with that when you're kind of working on your models, because if I would have followed the reference that I have right here and try and follow the shape of this roof, that's not technically correct. Again, you got to start kind of thinking in 3D and kind of understanding that perspective actually affects how we view an object. If we had a blueprint of how this house would look like from the front, it would be more along the lines of what you're seeing right now. And again, the image is going to be affected by perspective, and I made these changes just based on my other reference that I have, so that's why it's important to have as much as possible. Alright, so again, let's go back to this item right here. I'm using the Insert Edge Loop tool, and I'm going to insert, again, I can see that there's a little bit of detail right here in this line, so I'm going to insert the edge loop right there. Okay, so now we have, again, we added a cut there, and that's going to allow us to create that little bit of detail that we have here at the bottom. So let's do that first, and then we'll address the top part. So I'm going to go into my perspective, and I'm actually going to choose all the faces around here. Okay, and again, I'm using my navigational shortcuts to accomplish this. Every time I select a different face, if I want to select them all at the same time, just have to use Shift for that. And now that I have this, all the faces selected, I'm going to go into my edit mesh, and I'm going to use the Extrude tool. Okay, and again, my pivot's going to change right here. And if I move any, let's use this axis right here, is going to extrude everything out uniformly in one direction. But again, you got to be careful, because depending on the axis that you're using is going to be doing a different thing. So the Z axis is actually extruding the way I want to, because it's uniformly kind of extruding everything in one direction. If I use the X, it's going to be doing something different. If I use the Y, is going to be doing something different. So I'm going to be using the Z. Okay, and again, just kind of extruding a little bit of it out. Alright. Alright, and again, if you're a little bit confused about what's happening due to the X-ray view, you can always just go back into your shading, turn it off. Okay, and this is kind of what we have going on right now. Alright, and again, it looks the part. I'm just going to go back here into my front viewport, turn on my shading, my X-ray, sorry. And again, some of the things that we're seeing is that, perhaps this is a little bit bigger from what we have kind of going on here. And again, you can always go back and just select your sub-object mode and just kind of move it into the right place. So again, I'm kind of doing this changes on my orthographic just because it makes it easier to manipulate. If I were to be doing this in my perspective, it might end up moving things to locations that I don't want. Alright, so let's take care of the top part. So, and again, I'm going to go into my perspective so I can select this face right here. Alright, and perhaps this extrusion is going to be a lot easier if I do it through my perspective, and then I can go into my orthographic and maybe fix it up a little bit. Okay, so with extrusion, again, you can do a couple of things with your extrusion. When you click on it, again, your pivot's going to change, indicating that you're going to be able to modify it based on the position and also the scaling. So if we do it based on position, again, notice that it's going to take this face and extrude it out. But if we do it on scale basis, and again, if we do it through these axes individually, it's just going to do it based on that specific axis. So what I like to do is just switch to my scaling tool, and again, you can find it right here, or you can do the R shortcut. Okay, now this doesn't affect the fact that there is already an extrusion here. Notice that even though I'm out of that pivot, when I move, that's still there. The problem is that I didn't affect it by location or scale, but it's still there. So I'm going to use my scale and actually extrude it out like this and then move it up. Okay, and again, we're trying to accomplish this little bit of like a mushroom shape over here. Alright, so, and you know, again, for the next detail, which is, you know, it kind of came out like this. Now it's going to go up a little bit. I'm just going to do another extrusion, and to do that, again, you got to be careful here what you're selecting. I can go back into, and we got to be careful with how much scaling we're using here too. So it's a good idea to maybe go back into our front viewport, and again, this doesn't seem like I did anything too extreme. It's kind of matching the scale there. So I'm going to click back into extrude here, okay, and then move it up a little bit. Okay, and that takes care of this little detail right here. And then last, I'm going to do one more extrusion and kind of, you know, this is going to go up and in a little bit. And again, I can go back into my edit mesh and click on this again, or I can use the shortcut G, and it's basically going to do, it's going to, I guess, reselect the last tool that we applied. So if I click on G, again, notice that it did another extrusion. So I can move it up a little bit, shortcut R for scale, and move it in a bit. Okay, and again, we want to go back into a orthographic front view, so it's so we're kind of comparing to what we have there originally. And again, mine kind of ended up being a little bit too much, but I can go back here and edit this and move it to where it needs to be. Okay, and again, you never want to make these edits in a perspective viewport, because you know, it might not move the way you want to. So if you ever need to make changes like this, you know, the orthographic viewports are a little more effective. Okay, so now we have this bottom part right here, and again, we use extrusion techniques for that. Now we have, I want to work on this kind of brick fence right here, and again, just to kind of get a little warmed up. And again, this one, it's one that I can choose to do as one piece, or you know, it actually looks like it's probably easier if I actually do a two-piece you know, extrusion for this, because again, the top part right here is one thing, and you know, notice that this fence actually kind of goes in like this. So what I can do, again, go back into my front viewport. And again, keep in mind that this is being affected by perspective, so you're not going to be seeing the same if you're trying to model this based on an orthographic viewport. I'm going to use the Insert Edge Loop tool. Okay, and I want to mark, you know, how thick the fence that's going to be going in this direction is going to be. All right, and again, once I have the edge inserted, it automatically kind of changes to a position, so you know, you can kind of move it in and out depending on what you know, if it's a little bit too thick or not. I think this is going to work just fine. So I'm going to go into the back of it, select the face, and do another extrusion here, and I'm just going to pull this back, and I'm just going to pull it back as far as this side of the house goes. Okay. So again, that takes care of you know, what this brick kind of fence is doing, and you know, now we have to have a little bit of a top here for the brick kind of fence here. So again, initially, again, you kind of have to make these decisions yourself. Whether you want to keep it as one piece or break it into two separate pieces. I think for me, I find it a lot easier if I just break it into one piece, into two pieces, sorry. And so let's go ahead and do that. So I just want to go ahead into, I'm going to go into my shelf here and just create another box. Okay, it's going to be about this. So I'm going to go into the front viewport. And again, I gotta edit this out a little bit, like this. Alright, because again, this is not supposed to account for the fact that it has this top. So then I can take this, put it on top, like so. And I'm just gonna eyeball in that, and then just make a couple more modifications. And again, I need to kind of put it right on top of this, so make it easier. I'm gonna go to my top viewport. Alright, so that actually fits there pretty well. Alright, so that takes care of that. And then we also have a detail here for this kind of column here. And again, we'll have to kind of look at other reference to see how it's actually made. So let's just see if we'll have a better reference for that. And yeah, it looks like it's a similar kind of mushroom shape as this one right here. The only other difference is that if I will go back a couple ones, let's see, the bottom of this part is, it actually has like an extrusion here, okay, and then it's kind of connecting all of these different columns. So again, it really depends on how much of this I'm actually planning on modeling. You know, I probably don't want to do the whole thing, probably just one. Okay, so I think for this, what I'm going to end up doing is kind of building the first one, and then I'm going to be using the bridging technique. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to be using the bridging technique to connect these. All right. So again, let's just see if we can do that. So we have the basis of the first column right here. Okay, and again, it has that kind of mushroom shape, and we can do that right now. So I'm going to go into my perspective. I'm going to be selecting this face. I can go back into my front viewport here. And for that, I'm going to be using my extrusion technique here. And again, I need to kind of, if it's going to be one piece, I need to kind of extrude it out like so, a little bit, like this. And then I'm going to do a second extrusion that's going to move it up in this direction. Okay, and then I'm going to do a third extrusion that's going to give it that kind of mushroom shape at the top, and then I can just kind of scale this in to make it look like that, and then I could probably need to bring it down a bit. Okay. So let's assume that's kind of as far as we want to go with that. And then here at the bottom, again, the idea is that I want to take this column, you know, and I'm going to make a copy of it, and I believe it's probably going to be right over here somewhere. And then I'm gonna use these two columns and use the bridging technique to actually connect the two. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna use the insert edge loop tool just to kind of draw where that it's going to be located, you know, the connection. Next thing I'm going to do is take this and again, notice one thing about the pivots though is that if you go into the sub-object mode, and again, you can't really see it here. I think my recording software is not selected. It's not really showing you those boxes. You know, it'll is that you know, it doesn't really manipulate the location of your pivot, and again, by default it's usually at the center of your geometry. If you ever wanted to go back to the center of your geometry, you can manipulate the pivot by holding D and just kind of moving it where you want it to be, or you can go to modify and just click on center pivot, and it's going to put it right in the center of the object. So I'm just going to do that. Then I'm going to do Control D so I can do a duplicate of it and kind of move it to this location. Okay, and again, this is most mostly guesstimating. I'm not sure if it's really at this location, but again, I'm not going to do the whole face, the whole fence that goes across like this. So I'm going to change to my perspective. For the bridging to work here, okay, I'm going to need to actually combine these two objects. And again, this is my approach, and I'm just trying to show you you know, one way of doing this. You know, basically there's a couple ways that you can go about this. One of them is just copying them and then just having a separate piece of geometry for the bottom part. I'm specifically kind of doing it like this so I can show you the bridging tool. But you know, these methods are not set in stone. You just have to kind of analyze and see what kind of works better for you. Now, again, this is just me trying to show you what the bridging technique for something like this will be like. So now that I made a duplicate of this, I want to select them both. And again, make sure you're only selecting these, because for the bridging to work, you need to make sure that this is one piece of geometry. And right now it's two. So we're going to go to the mesh menu, and on top, at the top, you have combine. So I'm going to click on that. All right, and now if I select one, it's selecting both of them because it's one object. And again, I'm just kind of making sure I have my reference here on the side. Sure, why not? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, in order for this to bridge, you need to have a hole in your geometry. Okay, and again, let me just kind of switch to my regular shaded mode here. You cannot bridge this you know, this piece of geometry to this piece of geometry if there isn't a hole in your geometry. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm right clicking, selecting on face, okay, and then I'm selecting the face component right here at the bottom, and I'm gonna click on delete to delete it. Then I'm going to go to the second one here, select that face and delete that too. Now, for bridging to work, you also have to make sure that the faces, the edges kind of have a similar number here. So if this has 4 sides, this has to have 4 sides for this to work. Next thing that I'm going to do, again, just go ahead and select the edges, and then I'm going to click on bridge. Okay, and again, notice that it connected these two, and now I have that bottom part of the geometry that goes across the fence. Alright, and again, if we look at the reference, there's also this kind of top part here, and I probably figure it's probably be easier if I just make it into a separate piece. So I'm basically going to make a duplicate of the one that I did for the fence on this side and just move it over. Okay, and then I'm going to go into my front viewport so I can just put it in the right location, like this, and I'm just going to go into the sub-object mode here and just expand it a little bit, and probably need to go to the top viewport and see if it's covering as much as it needs to. So let's go to the top. Okay, and this is the geometry I just moved, and again, it's not covering everything that I need to cover, so I'm just going to go into the sub-object mode and just move it back a bit. Alright, so not bad there. Alright, so the next thing that I like to go over is the idea behind instances and you know, duplicate specials. So and this is a technique that I'm going to use to kind of fill out this this kind of fence bars over here. Okay, so let's start with this one over here. So again, I want to have just like a sample of it here in my building. I don't want to do the whole thing because I don't have reference for the whole street, so it's just going to basically look something like this. And so I want to do a little bit of fence here and a little bit of that kind of fence here at the top as well. But let's just begin with this one. And again, just to begin, it's a lot easier just to maybe start with something that's there already. So let's select this one, and I'm going to duplicate this. Alright, and I just needed to make it as thin as what it's right there, you know, and I'm just kind of guesstimating here that it's about that. Okay, and I'm going to go into my perspective, and again, this is way too thick, so I'm going to go into my scaling tool, which is here, or just click on R and then scale it inwards like that. And then I'm just going to move it to the back a little bit so it's kind of centered between the columns there. Again, it doesn't need to really be perfect. Alright, so let's talk about duplicates and instances. Now, we did a duplicate to copy this column to here, and then we combine it in the bridging. But sometimes you gotta make copies of objects that are basically gonna have, you know, the same look and they have the same function and everything. Now the problem with that is that, for instance, if I have this piece of window here that's basically supposed to be the same one as we see here, if I do the details on one of them, this one's basically going to be remain the same. And again, I could just kind of duplicate it and kind of place it in the same location, which is what I'm going to end up doing. But sometimes what makes it easier, and again, this kind of really depends on the duplicates of the object that you're going to have. It's make it into an instance, and when you make it into an instance, when you affect the original model or the instance, it affects them both. So allow me to demonstrate with this piece right here. So I'm going to go into Edit, and I'm going to go to Duplicate Special. Rather than click on it, I'm going to click on this box, which is going to give me the options for it. Okay. And these are my duplicate special options. Now, before we go into number of copies and stuff like that, again, the original, by default, we have copies, which is what we've been using every time we do Control D. But the instance is the one that's going to give us the piece of geometry that that's going to be able, that if I affect one, it's going to affect all of them. Now, one thing that you want to do, because again, sometimes depending on what Maya or version of Maya you're working with, or if somebody was using it before, is that you're going to start with their settings, and something here might not be what you want to be. So always go to Edit and reset the settings so everything's where it needs to be. So again, have this object selected. Rather than copy, make sure you change it to instance and then apply. Okay. Now nothing seemed to have happened, but if we go here, I have a duplicate of this piece of fence right here. And okay, so now again, what makes the instance special is that if I select, let's say, the vertices on this piece of instance right here, is going to affect both of them and not just the top one. Okay. And again, just to show you the difference, I'm going to do another duplicate of this one that's just a copy. So I'm going to apply it, and I'm going to go into the instance. Again, it's going to affect the top and the bottom one because this one is an instance of this one, but this one just being a copy is not going to do anything. Okay. So alright, so that's the difference between a copy of an instance. Another thing that you can do with the duplicate special is make multiple duplicates of something. So now we have these kind of fences that are going across. Alright, and again, I just want to do something that's kind of in the place for it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this 90 degrees like this. Alright, and again, if you're not sure about whether this is, you know, straight up like it needs to be, make sure to go into your channel box. Okay. And again, notice that if we look at the rotate Z, it's at 88.822. Again, we need this to be at 90 degrees. All right, so that way we know, you know, it's, you know, some of the rotation is not facing in all direction. It's a perfect 90 degrees right there. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna move it up a little bit. Okay, and again, the fence seems to have just a little bit of height here, so that's a little bit too much. So I'm just going to put it right here. Then I'm going to move it to this instance right here. Okay. Okay. So now what I want to do is be able to tell Maya to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, let's say 15 copies of this instance on this direction. Okay. So what we have to determine a couple of things. One, how much distance do we need to tell Maya to duplicate this to? Okay. So you know, if we look at the numbers right here, this is at a, let's just put this at a -13. Okay. And then it's just gonna make it easier for me to determine how much it needs to move. Then, and again, notice the translation's happening in the x-axis. So if I move it a little bit to the side, I'm gonna determine that, you know, it needs to move about 0.25 in a, what would this be, a negative direction, to give me the distance between the poles, I guess. So let's just go back here. All right, let's go into our duplicate special menu, which is still open. And again, if you need to open it again, you go to edit and duplicate special. Again, you don't want to click on this, you want to make sure you go to the options by clicking on the box. And once we have this, again, we want this to translate on the x-axis. All right. Now, when you're looking at this, again, you got to keep in mind that you're working in 3D. So, in 3D, we have this axis, and in order to move in 3D, you will have to you are in an X, Y, Z axis. Okay. And when you're looking at this, you're basically looking at the X, Y, Z axis. First one's always the X, then the Y, then the Z. So, if I'm moving again in this direction, I'm moving in a positive, I believe it's a positive direction, and if you move in this direction, it's a negative. So we need to tell Maya that I want, let's say, 15 duplicates of this one on the X positive direction, all right, at a distance of 0.25 inches. So I want to go into the translate X and type 2.5. all right, and I want to tell it to give me, again, maybe something around 15. And again, if I do more than I need to, I can always delete them. And I don't know if these poles are I'm gonna have any detail, so just to be safe, I want to make sure that all of them are instances of each other. So if I edit one of them, all of them are going to be changed. So I want to go here and just click on apply, and again, let's just see if it's actually on the positive direction like I assume. Alright, so again, it's given me 15 on a positive direction, and it looks like I either need more or need to tell it to maybe space them out a little bit. So let's do 0.3, okay, and let's maybe do 20, okay, and again, there's still instances, so I'll just apply it. And that looks about right, but I might gotten a couple more than I don't need. So I'm gonna click on 4 and just delete, so I can see the wireframe alone, and I'm just gonna delete what I don't need. Okay. Let's go back to wireframe. Alright, and again, all of these are instances of each other. So if I wanted to go back here and just edit one of them, you know, it'll do it. Whatever I do to one, it's going to do to all of them. And this, it is not just on positioning, but also any sort of modeling that you do to it. So if I go back into my edit mesh tool here, and let's say I wanted to add a little bit of detail to the top here, and if I do, let's just say a simple extrude here, and if I move up and scale this inwards, notice that all of those metal poles had the same change. All right. Now, if I wanted to do the same thing on the other side, you know, I'll probably do the same just to kind of make it easier for me to manipulate all of them. Okay. And okay, so in this lesson we cover some basic modeling techniques with some of these beginning parts. So we use the insert edge loop tools to insert edges. We use the extrusion for here as well. And again, extrusion here, insert edge loop tool. Then we duplicated this. All right, we bridged it, and that's how we created this part. And we finished by explaining what instances are and how you can use duplicate special to create something like this. Alright, so in the next video I'm probably gonna have this kind of part of the fence done using the same technique, and we're probably gonna start talking about how we go about creating some of the most complicated models in this structure. Thank you for watching.